Hello, and welcome to Today in the World, where I'll be talking about news from around the world and giving you my thoughts. Yesterday I forgot to talk about Sudan and give you updates on what was happening there, so just here it is, I guess, right now. So this was reporting done by the Sudan Tribune that Sudan is sending a government delegation to Cairo for talks with U.S. and Saudi officials to end the conflict in Sudan. This was the delegation that was supposed to go to Geneva, Switzerland, to discuss a ceasefire with the U.S. and the Rapid Support Forces. Um, so they're not, obviously, at the ceasefire talks. Instead, they were hoping to talk with um, Saudi and the U.S. I believe it was in Cairo, to talk about implementing something else. Um, and it looks like still the RSF are the only ones who are at the ceasefire talks currently taking place. So this took place today, and they had discussed, or they had discussed the implementation of the Jeddah Declaration, which was a ceasefire deal that was signed between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces in May. Um, yeah, it's hopefully some kind of ceasefire goes through so that they can get humanitarian aid into Sudan. Obviously, we did discuss previously why they wouldn't show up to ceasefire talks with the RSF. Um, and I think just another reason of that is if they recognize the RSF as a legitimate body to be having ceasefire talks with, I think there are um, political problems that come along with that. Um, because it would be unofficial, but it would almost be the recognition of another government in the area. So anyway, that was the update about Sudan. It was just a short little one. Um, there will probably be more updates on the ceasefire talks that are going on in Cairo in the coming weeks. And yeah, we'll talk about that when we see some updates on the story. And here's the interesting one: was in Southeast Asia, in Taiwan, they have been conducting live fire missile drills that were showcasing their surface to air missiles, surface to surface missiles, and I think this was their little way of showing China that they do have missiles that can reach mainland China. Um, they were doing testing in the Taiwanese Strait. Uh, Ironically, they're doing the testing. Well, I guess not ironically, but they're doing the testing as China has been stepping up their maritime patrols near Taiwan and Japan. This is all comes from the Washington Examiner. And it was a very public drill where the media was actually invited to view the exercises. According to the reporting done, that hasn't been the case for 12 years. So I think this is a very clear, not necessarily threat to China, but just a way for them to let China know, like, hey, we have missiles that can hit your land. We have missiles that can blow up your ships. That kind of thing. And apparently the tests have gone great, so it's always good to hear. Um, and over the weekend, this is reporting done by the South China Morning Post, so keep in mind it definitely does have a Chinese bias to it. The Chinese officials were conducting patrols in the Taiwan Strait to enhance maritime traffic control. The Chinese government had also sent a guided missile destroyer and amphibious assault ship through the international waters between a pair of Japanese islands. It's almost a veiled threat at Japan as well as Taiwan. Um, the way that they are sending all their coast guard to the Philippines, they've got warships between them and Taiwan. They're sending more ships, just kind of Japan's way. And I was reading the article, and it was like it's nice to see that Japan and Taiwan are unofficial allies, just strengthening uh, basically a non-China group of countries in the region. Yeah, I just thought that was kind of cool. I think it would be cool if the Philippines were also an unofficial ally of Taiwan, considering all that the Philippines have been doing in the area to deter China and strengthen their own influence in the region. Especially considering that it has been reported that the Philippines are specifically looking for allies in the South China Sea region to deter the growing influence of China in that region. Uh, and yeah, it's just, Taiwan's obviously doing these drills to deter Chinese influence, and the Philippines have been doing all their joint military training drills to deter Chinese influence. Like their goals definitely seem aligned. Um, yeah, it would be, I think, probably a little not quite dangerous, but in that sense, to have the Philippines and China conducting joint military drills just because of the economic ties, to put it lightly, that China has in the region to all those countries. But I guess we'll see what the future holds for this little area and the countries in it. And I guess while we're discussing a little bit about China, um, jump back to the EU because we had talked about this recently. The tariffs that the EU were planning on implementing on incoming Chinese EVs and other goods. So the planned tariffs that were supposed to happen on Chinese-made EVs has been slashed. Um, for Chinese companies, a little less than for other companies. For instance, large companies like Tesla and Volkswagen, their tariffs have decreased significantly from the proposed 36.3% to between 10 and 20%. That's a significant drop for those companies, and you can kind of see that reflected in Tesla's share value because the share price did jump today a little bit. It was a lot less for Chinese companies, I believe somewhere in the range of 30% rather than 36.3%. It's still a drop, not as big, obviously, but it's still a pretty good drop for Chinese EV companies. And these tariff slashing has come after the EU had done an investigation into unfair state subsidies. Obviously, it's been widely reported, unconfirmed, but widely reported that the Chinese government provides large subsidies to their companies, and this allows them to produce goods considerably cheaper than other um, other companies they compete against. It's really big for China. It helps stimulate their economy. It helps these companies grow, and it sends EU dollars, the euro. It sends the euro into China rather than keeping it in in the European Union. It's I think I don't know. I'm not a huge fan, but yeah. And then also I'll talk probably a little bit about the tariffs and why this is important a little later. It's just interesting because a lot of manufacturing has shifted toward China because obviously they do it for much cheaper. So we're buying goods, sending them to China, and then China is sending us the finished product. And granted, manufacturing is not the driving force of economics that it once was, but it does still play a role in the economy. I think that it does still help stimulate the economy. Um, and I think especially important, I think something that's been lost in the international trade that's been happening over the past 20 years is that you're sending your money, like wherever you're from, if you're bringing in goods from the other countries, you're sending your money to those countries. It's not money that's staying in your economy anymore. You're helping stimulate other economies. And granted, they're helping stimulate you, but you have to remember that it's Canadian dollars or it's US dollars or it's the euro that is no longer being circulated in the US or Canada or in the European Union. It's being sent abroad, it's being sent to all these other countries. I think it's just an important note to take. Um, anyway, I know that a lot of people don't find economics and world trade super interesting, so I'm just going to move on from that. Um, just a little quick update that I saw pop up was that Iran has finally basically issued their response. I think we were all waiting for maybe an attack from Iran, and they have actually come out and said that they don't want to rush into any attacks. And it's interesting that this is coming after they said they want the ceasefire to happen to lower regional tension, and now they're saying that their attack that they plan to do, their punishment of Israel, is going to be more calculated than previously. I think anyone who thought this attack wasn't going to happen because it hasn't happened recently was being very optimistic. I think it was only a matter of time before either they announced something or an attack happened. I still think it's a matter of time before an attack happens, before they punish Israel. Um, Especially the calculated nature of it. Like they're planning something for sure in Iran. Um, it's a little worrying because I know I'm a cynicist. I know I can be like that, a pessimist almost. But it's worrying just because this is this is a region where a lot of politicians who are currently in power would be more than willing to send troops to go to war for Israel, and plenty of countries that would support a war against Israel as well. For instance, you have Russia who would support Iran in a war against Israel. Right. This is a very big regional flashpoint, a very tense area, and the fact that instead of just hastily firing missiles or something at Israel, Iran is taking its time. They're planning something out. I pray that it's not. I pray that it's as calculated as they seem to think it is. That it's not going to be like that. It's not going to be a full scale attack. Basically, I know that's unlikely, but there is a chance that retaliation by Iran leads to retaliation by Israel, um, something that could spiral into, at best, a regional war and at worst, a much larger war. I wonder if I honestly wonder if Iran is just waiting for the American election just to see what happens there before they decide to do something. Who knows though, right? Like it's I hate saying this, but it's going to be interesting to see what comes of this, especially as an American election does loom. Um, anyway, that's all I have for you today. And as always, if I've missed any international stories, please let me know. I can be reached via my email todayintheworld2024 at gmail.com or in the comments section of YouTube, of Rumble, Spotify. Yeah, anyway, I hope this was informative and that you listen to me next time. I will continue to monitor these stories and let you know what's happening today in the world.